Hello and welcome. We're glad you joined us for this video, and today we wanted to share with you a key piece of what Soulful Heart is. And
I'm Shalelle.
I'm Raphael. And I'm going to read to you one of the premises of Soulful Heart, and that's what we want to talk about today. Rather than just one singular I in charge of life, Soulful Heart offers that we are made up of many parts, or subpersonalities, both those in our outed expression as well as those in our shadow. These are formed through undigested traumas that can be integrated and healed into an authentic, sacred human self that we call the Soulful Heart self.
Yes. Where do we start?
I was thinking you knew.
Yeah. This basically summarizes about 11 or 12 years of our personal journey. It's really a key premise of what we're offering, and that's why we wanted to talk about it. Parts or subpersonalities is not such a new idea. Even Carl Jung was exploring that and offered the idea of personas and shadow and archetypes. There's also a voice dialogue process as well, which gets into protector, controller tones, inner child. So this is pretty familiar things in another way.
And it's radical.
Yeah. It's the initial shift of thinking of, wait a minute, I'm not just I, as I know myself, but I am actually a mixture of tones and feelings and energies. Now we call them parts of ourselves because it's just easier to say that. But I also really love sub-personalities.
Yeah. It's really kind of common in our language. It's funny, we have a push-pull relationship with this idea of parts, because many times just out talking with people, you'll hear them say, well, part of me, and I'm always a little bit, hey, yeah, that's my language.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've even heard people say, well, part of me does and part of me doesn't.
Yeah.
And then, but when we talk about this specifically, more consciously, people can get a little bit, isn't that kind of like multiple personality? And we have to answer that question directly and say that we don't feel that we are made up of a singular I, just like we read in the premise, that we are a unique expression of several different parts of ourselves.
Could I just speak to cognitive dissociative disorder, multiple personality disorder is a different condition where there's not a conscious self there. You become the personality without consciousness. So we're speaking of something different here, where you're working with parts of yourself consciously. So you're not just becoming, it's not dissociative in that way. It's actually integrative over time.
Right, the key point being that there's somebody at home,
Yes.
so to speak, to be with the parts.
Which you could call the ego. That works as a term that is home, relating with the parts. And the more that happens and the differentiation happens, the more aware the ego becomes. Which is why this is actually an awakening process, not just a therapeutic one, although it has those benefits.
I like to say that it's the idea that we are just one personality is really just that. It's an idea, a perception, and if you feel through it, you can feel a mood swing. What we call a mood swing isn't just a mood swing, it's a need of a part of us that's flooding our space. A reaction that we have to somebody that comes out of the blue is again another part of us blasting onto our awareness with their reaction and their need. It's a really low consciousness picture to wrap all of that under the idea of a single personality.
And it's limiting, and because all you can then be is your moods. And it feels like, a client recently described it as you're like a soup. You're just this soup with a mess of different things going on, anxiety and guilt and punishment and control, and joy is in there too. But in this soup, you just really have no sense of what's in the soup. Like you can't feel the vegetables or the spices or anything, and it boils over often.
And you could be quite happy in some dimensions of your life and fulfilled, and thinking that, oh my God, I've got so much going for me. I have no reason to be unhappy right now. And pretzeling yourself around the fact that you're just not happy. And a part of you is in your space with some other needs that aren't in alignment with all the goodness that you may be feeling in your life. And so, but if we don't recognize the polarity, this polarity inside of ourselves, we end up with a flat line kind of coming out in the middle. Part of us is bubbling off in joy, another part of us is in deep need, or maybe anguish or grief or guilt or rage.
Yes.
And what do? We come up with a personality somewhere that can kind of play down the middle.
Yes.
That's empty, dead, and boring.
But this play down the middle part is also beloved in another way, because it's really usually our protector, or they're our controller, we call it too, that gets us through life, that had to come in at a pretty early age. And this is also where I want to go next, is why do these parts form? I don't want to lose that thought though. Why do they form?
Okay, let's go there. But I wanted to just honor what you just said about the flatline personality. Although, okay, I may be having a part right now judging or expressing its opinion about dislike for that dead flatline, because you just can't get to it. You can't relate to it when it's coming out in conversation or in personal exchange.
Right.
But to get to know the part of you that's producing the flatline, oh my God, that's their reasons, their whys, their what it's like to be in their world, is to fall in love with with a magical part of you.
Well, and that's the why they form. Is usually the story is that life wasn't safe. Our caregivers, either they did the best they could, or they didn't, and we had to form some kind of shield. I mean, the idea of a wall or a defense or a shield, most people can relate to that. They can feel when their defenses are up, and they'll even use those words. So what if you could get to know your defense? It's like an outer perimeter of your heart's here, and you have this fence. So what if you could walk out to the fence and say, why do you exist? And get to know it, and eventually help it dismantle itself, so that you can have free flow of love and intimacy.
In a process of starting to gain awareness of the defense, of
even realizing you have a fence, right?
Realizing you have a fence. I don't think that one's too hard for most people,
right?
Because they see it operational in their lives, and they see its effect in their relationships. But to make contact, to differentiate you from the defense, and then to make contact and begin to feel an increasing differentiation is a key word we use, differentiation from the part of you, and feel it like a separate being, literally a separate being inside of yourselves. And the intimacy that begins from that initial contact and begins to emerge in life. Life is the facilitation point that this awareness emerges into.
Yep. I don't know what I would add to that other than our processes around that, connecting, journaling, and that sort of thing. So it becomes a real relationship that you're having. So thank you for joining us.